If you're serious about improving your scores, then working on the 30 to 80 yard pitch shot is an area of the game that should have your attention. I see so many golfers struggling with this mid-distance wedge shot through a lack of practice, lack of understanding, poor technique, which is costing you so many shots every single time you play. So today we're going to tackle this mid-distance wedge shot head-on, 30 to 80 yard pitch shots, the complete guide, so you can turn what's currently a weakness into a strength. The exact distances we're talking about today are going to vary slightly from player to player, but a mid-distance wedge shot is something that's not a full swing. It's less than a full swing, and it's not a chip shot that you're going to play along the ground. A pitch shot, by definition, spends more time in the air than it does along the ground. It's going to come in, land fairly softly, and hopefully have some spin. So that's the shot we're talking about today, and I'm going to show you a range of different setups and swings that you're going to be able to use that take you from about 30 to 80 yards and give you a complete solution to this shot. I want to briefly discuss the two major problems I see with people trying to execute this mid-distance wedge shot. The first one is that you treat it like a full swing and then try to take the power out in the downswing. So the setup, the backswing, looks like you're going to hit a full shot, and then because you know this is going to go too far, this backswing's too long, you then spend the downswing slowing down, deaccelerating, quitting on the ball, hitting it fat, hitting it thin, and having absolutely no idea how this ball is going to come off the club face. No control of contact, and because of that, no control of distance. And the second reason is almost the opposite of that. It's the fact that you know this ball can't fly full distance, and so you think in order to remove distance, you remove movement. So we freeze over the ball. There's no rotation of the body, and this becomes a hands and arms and wrist shot. As you can see as I demonstrate this swing, the amount of flex in my elbows and wrists is really messing with the radius of the swing. And once the radius gets out of whack, you've got no real chance of controlling, once again, that contact, the landing point of the club on the ground, the strike point on the club face, which ultimately is responsible for how far this ball is going to go. So those are the two main issues. You're treating it like a full swing when it's not, and you're trying to hit it so short, almost like a chipping action, when it's not that shot either. It's quite possible that the errors I just highlighted look very familiar to you, too familiar in fact. But fear not, if it's you see hitting these shots inconsistently and having no ability to control the contact or the distance, we are going to tackle this subject in detail today. We're going to start with the club selection. For these mid-distance wedge shots, I'd recommend using between 52 and 56 degrees of loft. That's probably between a gap wedge and a sand wedge for most of you. And that's because that window of loft creates great launch conditions for this type of shot. The launch angle, height of shot, and spin rate are all nicely managed and combined to give us optimal numbers. Good flight, nice landing angle, and also the likelihood of creating enough spin to be able to get the ball to grab on the green. If you use too much loft in this shot, maybe a 60-degree wedge that you're thinking about, the tendency is for the ball to slide up the face. You lose friction, you lose launch control, and the distance control becomes more difficult because of that. Equally, if you have too little loft for this shot, maybe a pitching wedge or even a 9-iron, you're going to find that the ball launches too low, comes off too fast with too much speed, and has no spin. You can't stop the ball on the green. So choose your gap wedge or sand wedge, something around 52 to 56 degrees of loft is ideal, and try to stick with that same club for all of these shots. So now we've chosen our club, let's talk about how to hit these shots. And we'll begin at the lower end of these distances, the 30-yard shot. Standing much closer to the ball than I would do for a typical shot, and with a stance which is much narrower, maybe one club head width apart from my heels, my toes just slightly turned out, maybe 2 to 3 club head widths wider. So I'm standing with the ball more or less in the center of my stance, and that's quite important as well, because as I'm swinging here and making some practice swings, I want to get the sense of the club bottoming out more or less at the ball. We're not looking to take such a divot on these shots. We're not looking to hit down as much as we do on a regular full iron shot. We're not looking to take a divot. We're not looking to hit so far in front of the ball. In fact, for this shot, we're really trying to get the club and the ball to interact right at the bottom of the arc here. So putting the ball in the center and having the shaft much more straight up and down is ideal for this shot and for this setup. One other setup adjustment I'd recommend is to weaken your grip, meaning you turn both of your hands more to the left on the club here as I set up. So when I look down at the left hand, I've got maybe one knuckle visible. My thumb's more central on the grip than it would be for a more standard grip for a full swing. So turn the left hand to the left, one knuckle visible, and then as you add the right hand, that's going to also sit a little more on top of the grip than a standard shot. And the reason for this is this type of grip helps to keep the club face a little bit more open than it would be for normal shot. And that's a good thing here. We're not looking to create maximum ball speed. In fact, if anything, we're looking to reduce it. We're not trying to hit the ball too far. So a slightly open club face is going to help me to do that. It's also going to ensure that I can launch the ball correctly. It helps me deliver more bounce here at the bottom of the swing. The likelihood of hooking or pulling the ball to the left when I close this club face is vastly reduced. That turning or closing of the club face is quite a common error with this shot as well, which adds a lot of distance to this shot, meaning it often goes much further than you want it to. So a weaker grip for all of these mid-distance wedge shots helps you manage the face and ultimately manage the distance. And for the shortest distance shot, the swing is going to be the shortest. In fact, as I swing back and through, in my mind, I'm just feeling that the shaft of the club reaches hip height to hip height, parallel with the ground to parallel with the ground. One of the things that you're going to see as a theme through these shots is that there's some symmetry built into these swings, meaning the length of the backswing and the length of the follow through look quite similar. And that's a really useful tip to take to the course. You don't want to have an excessively long backswing, as we've already said, and then find yourself de-accelerating. Equally, we don't want something super short on the backswing and then trying to get all the power out into the follow through. So symmetry is good. We want to feel like the body and the arms work together. It's a great exercise that you can do to ensure that this happens. Grab a golf towel or an old shirt at home that you can use and take it and roll it up like this and place it under your arms. Okay, so you get this connection between the upper arm and the body, the torso. So my triceps and my rib cage are connected. That helps you to start to feel this connection that we want between the body and the arms for this shot. I've already suggested this isn't a power shot. We're not trying to create lots of speed. We're not trying to get lots of separation into the swing. We just want the club, the hands, the arms, and the body to move together on both sides of the swing. Keeping your arms connected, holding the towel, as I'm doing here, will really help you to get a sense of the correct motion for this shot. Felt very connected, felt very solid. That's gone 29 yards. Pretty nice flight. One of the things that I really want to communicate to you guys is that this feels like a swing that gets hip height to hip height for me. And although that may not be the reality, it's important you have a sense of the end of the backswing and the end of the follow through. So these two end points feel like there's something you can repeat. Because if you can repeat the backswing and the follow through, the middle point here can be more consistent. It's more likely to be repeatable. Also, keeping the towel under my arms helps me to keep this connection and this rhythm and timing of body and arms working together. That swing feels like it's right at the end of the top end of the distance I can hit this, whilst keeping the feeling at least that my wrists are involved at a minimal level. So it feels like my arc of my takeaway, my arms and my club are quite wide. It also feels quite similar to that on the front side. So it's a nice way to compartmentalize this swing in my head. It's a swing whereby it feels quite wide in the backswing, quite wide in the follow through. There's symmetry and there's connection between the arms and the body. And you'll also notice as I make these little swings, how much my knees are moving. My knees are still changing flex quite a lot throughout this shot. It's only gone 30 yards, yet there's still a significant amount of hip turn and body turn involved in hitting this shot. So that's the first version of the shot. Learn something that's connected, keep your arms and body together. Feel like the club reaches parallel with the ground to parallel with the ground. Get the sensation of brushing the grass, brushing the mat each time you swing through. And once you get that, your contact will be more consistent the delivery of the club then hits the ball more consistently and produces a ball speed and a distance that can be more predictable. That's going to be your low end of your mid-flighted wedge distance shot. Now we can move on to the next shot in this 30 to 80 yard range, this sort of middle distance of the range, somewhere around 50 yards, shall we say. And for that, we're going to need to widen our stance slightly, stand a little bit further from the ball, and allow the pivot of the swing to just start to increase. And the main difference here from the shortest shot is that you're really going to start to notice that the wrists begin to get more involved in the loading of the backswing and also on the follow through. Once again, we're looking for some of that symmetry that we saw on the first shot. So this somewhat of an L shape that I'm getting to here in the backswing is mirrored on the follow through. And again, the symmetry and the connection that we talked about in that first shot still exists. One of the biggest differences here in these mid-flighted wedge shots, these mid-distance wedge shots, is that you don't have the same power sequence that you would normally have in a full swing where you're trying to create maximum power, maximum ball speed. Those movements are the separation of the lower body and the upper body. When it comes to this pitch shot, you're really going to find that the body and the club, for the most part, are moving very much together. There's no violent force being pulled through this club down to impact. We're trying to get everything to work together. A nice feel for that is the towel under the arms. We've already shown you that, and that can continue for this mid-distance shot. Another nice way to feel that would just to be put the club in your chest or your belly here, put the grip of the club in the belly, and just start to get a feel for how the body pivot, the arms, and the club match each other. As we move into this longer shot, we want to allow those wrists to just start to set slightly. We're looking for an L shape to L shape sort of feeling. And where I said that my shaft feels like it gets to parallel with the ground on the backswing and the follow through for the shortest shot, for this shot, I feel like my left arm gets around parallel to the ground in the backswing and my right arm parallel to the ground in the follow through, just continuing that theme of symmetry and giving us some reference, some internal mental reference that I can use when I'm trying to play this shot. So slightly wider stance, ball still in the middle, no shaft lean. The weight's going to favor the front foot slightly for all of these shots. I'm going to have more weight just moving into my lead side. Not lots, it's not a massive amount, it's just a favoring maybe 60-40 on the front leg, and I like to feel like that stays fairly constant throughout. We're still looking to get that brushing of the grass as we swing through. Each time we're just trying to have a light interaction with the turf. We're not trying to take big divots with this shot. That one felt really nice, connected again, decent contact, and I added a small object here between my arms. You may not have seen me throw that in there. Why did I do that? Well, for this shot, one of the biggest mistakes you're going to be making is as you lengthen this swing and try to add the wrists, as we've started to talk about, golfers do so by typically bending their arms too much. Again, that radius gets out of sync, out of whack. You can't control the contact. The Tour Striker Smart Ball or similar object that I've highlighted before on the channel for other reasons is a great tool to teach you these pitch shots. The connection of the elbows and the arms together, holding the ball, ensures that if you are going to lengthen this swing, you're going to do it correctly via the pivot and the wrist angles, not via the arms bending. If you drop the ball, you know you're making an error. So adding to the connection between the body and the arms that we had with the towel under the arms for the shortest version of this drill, as you extend up towards this longer swing, we want to keep the connection between the body and the arms so we can retain the towel under the arms as well as part of this exercise. But having an object between your arms, between your forearms or your elbows, helps you to maintain the structure of the swing, the integrity of the swing radius, so that the swing on both sides can be more constant. We've already said that helps the club head delivery to be more constant. The loft you deliver to the ball is better, and therefore your distance is more predictable. Flew up a little bit higher, caught the top of the screen. But what's important to note here is that the distance that you're able to hit these shots comes out and starts to become more predictable. Ultimately, the benefit of all of this for you is having a swing that produces an outcome that has an expectation for you. If you're trying to hit the ball 50 yards, you want it to go somewhere between 45 and 55 probably, to make sure that you're not making too much of an error. So it's not about hitting an exact number every single time. You don't have to hit this perfectly 50 yards with every swing. But what you're looking for is to develop a sensation, an internal feeling in your body of how far back, how far through, and what that swing produces. Once you've got that in your mind, there's the predictability element that we're looking for. And that leads to the confidence on the golf course when you're faced with a shot of, let's say, 40 yards. You've got that swing in your locker. You're not standing over the ball panicking. So this isn't about an exact distance that this swing should hit the ball. It may vary for you. It probably will. It will vary from player to player. And that middle distance swing that we've just spoken about needs to produce a predictable outcome in your world, whatever that looks like, whether that's 35 yards or 55 yards. As long as you have the ability to recreate it, reproduce it, then it's adding a tool to your toolbox. And when it comes to the longest version of this mid-distance wedge shot, I want to talk about how I use my full swing in a slightly different way than usual. A full swing with my sand wedge would typically go about 100 yards. This 80-yard shot is about 80% of 100 yards. It's an 80% swing. I get that 80% distance from a reduction in my tempo, the overall tempo of my swing. It goes back to the point I made earlier where we're not looking to really create speed and power in this swing and put excessive force through the club to try and hit this ball as far as we can. We're trying to reduce the power to an extent. An 80% swing here for me is a full swing in terms of pivot, back and through, but at a speed that's reduced. There's no conscious effort to swing hard or swing fast. So I reduce the speed or the tempo of my swing, keep the backswing and the follow-through lengths consistent, and that produces an outcome for me that's that 80% of my expected distance. Flight was pretty straight. Distance is 73. That's okay. I'm happy with that. That felt quite nice. I haven't hit any warm-up shots for this shot. That's my first attempt. 73 yards isn't terrible in terms of what I was trying to do. I obviously need to add a little bit more effort and a little bit more speed to get me to that 80-yard number. But again, the number itself isn't really the key piece here. It's the ability to produce a swing and a speed of swing that produces a more consistent outcome. This full swing, this longest swing for you might only produce 60 yards. That's fine, as long as you're able to stand over the ball on the golf course, set up and repeat it. The setup for this shot is pretty close to what you would do for a full swing with your wedges. So my stance has got back out to its full width. I'm standing further from the ball than I was earlier with those shorter versions of the shot. The ball stays in the middle. There's a minimal amount of shaft lean. We're still not taking big divots here, but as the swing gets longer, the angle of attack is going to increase into the ball. We're going to take a bigger divot than we do for those smaller versions of this shot. Full on the backswing, full on the follow through, and just try to manage the speed and the rhythm to get the outcome that I'm looking for. Feels very smooth. It kind of makes me think about players whose rhythm is quite nice and slow, Fred Couples and Ernie Els type rhythm when I swing. 79 yards, pretty much got myself there on swing number 2. That felt comfortable and felt like something I could reproduce. And really, that's the key here. It's something that you can reproduce. I've shared with you 3 different swing types, 3 types of swing that you can work on to give you a range of shots, a range of distances for these mid-distance wedge shots. And I strongly recommend using the training aids that I suggested today for all of these swings. If you're new to this or if you struggle with this shot, getting a sense of the connection that we're looking for between the arms and the body via the towel under the arms, and getting a sense of the structure of the radius that we need to maintain from the ball between the arms is really, really useful. That's standing closer to the ball for the shortest one, keeping that connection and brushing the grass while my arms are touching my side and I'm squeezing the ball. Same to be said as we just get a little further from the ball, a little wider with the stance. Now we're setting the wrists on the back side and just rehinging the wrists slightly in the follow through. For the longest version of this shot, the towel under the arms may provide a little bit of help for some of you, particularly those of you that lift your arms excessively. It does become a little more challenging to keep the towel under the arms for the longest swing, but it's certainly doable. You may find that that feels a touch restricted, but I'd encourage you to put in place some of these constraints. Give yourself some constraints to work within so that you start to understand the type of feeling that we're looking for in the backswing and all the way through to the follow through. I'm still keeping the connection here between my arms and my body. I'm still holding the ball. Those three swings should provide you with a full range of distances that you can work with for these mid-distance wedges. They're such an important shot. If you're anything like me, you're going to play this shot 4, 5, 6 times around, maybe even more. The higher your handicap, the more greens you're going to be missing. And the more greens that you're missing, the more pitch shots you're going to find yourself with in every round of golf. So if you could take this weakness, this current weakness, and turn it into a strength, you're going to see your scores tumble. So there's your complete guide to pitching, how to set up and execute each one of these shots from around 30 to 80 yards, the mid-distance pitch shot that so many of you struggle with. And now you're armed with the information and the drills that you need to do. You can go and develop this area of your game. I'd encourage you to try each of those 3 swing lengths I suggested. Pay attention to how far the balls fly and use those distances as a stock guide next time you're on the golf course. You'll be amazed how having a confident distance in your mind, a distance that you think you can hit the ball, and a swing with which you can execute it, how quickly that adds to your confidence on the golf course, how that changes this shot from being one that's scary and comes with anxiety and fear over where the ball's going to end up into something that you can be sure is going to land on the green and give yourself a chance of getting up and down. The difference this will make to your scores is, for some of you, enormous. A huge opportunity here to improve your scoring with one simple range of shots. Get out there, practice it, and let me know how you get on. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and get down into the comments and let me know what you thought. Do you have a different system for pitching, one that's successful for you? Ultimately, this area of the game is all about finding what works, having some predictability to the contact and the distance the ball's going to fly. So if you've tried something else and it's worked for you, I'd love to hear about it, and I'm sure others would love to read it too. Get down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on pitching. And if you'd like to learn how to master the shorter shots closer to the green, the low, mid, and high trajectory shots, then you can go and check out this video right here that I made, which covers that exact topic.